Everyone, this is Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor, and today we're going to go over the 6 biggest mistakes that crypto investors make. Now, if you've been in crypto for a long time, hopefully this is all going to be basically, old news to you. But for you, maybe if you're just getting into crypto, this is going to be a great list that you're going to definitely want to make sure that you pay close attention to. And not necessarily ranking these in order, but number one is leaving your crypto on a hot wallet. So what I mean by a hot wallet is, where you don't end up controlling your private keys. Maybe it's on an exchange. Maybe you've got it on your phone, and not all phone wallets necessarily are created equal, or I mean, they're definitely not created equal. But if you've got your money on, let's say, Coinbase, or let's say Kraken, or any one of these other exchanges, although they may be very good exchanges, you don't want to trust very good. You want to trust, what you can have in your pocket. And so having, whether it's, having some sort of hardware wallet, whether it's having a paper wallet, whether it's having a crypto steal, if you don't know what any of those terms mean, then that's definitely a reason that you're going to want to talk to someone over here at my firm. So in that way we can help get you set on the right path. But ultimately, if you don't have the keys, it's not your crypto. I mean, how many more basically of these instances do we have to come across? I mean, we've had recently, Quadriga. I mean, originally we had Mt. Gox, way back when. But, for some reason, everyone keeps falling victim to this. So make sure whatever you do that you actually are the one that has the private keys to your crypto. Now, another major amateur move that I see all the time is that people do not take into account the actual market caps of these of the cryptocurrencies, and more importantly, the supply of the cryptocurrency. So, if someone wants to say, hey, this crypto is trading at 37 cents, and Bitcoin's at over 10,000. Well, if it gets to half of what Bitcoin gets to someday, if it gets to a fraction of Bitcoin, and I just pump in a little bit of money and I buy thousands and thousands of coins, then that's basically a surefire way to get rich. Well, it's not, because what people don't understand is that some coins out there have, I'm not going to name any in particular, but some of you guys can probably figure it out, 100 billion supply, whereas Bitcoin only has 21 million, of which right now, as of the middle of 2019, we're creeping up to, I think we're at like 17.8 million. And then you probably have a good, 4 or 5 million that's been lost. And part of the reason why it's been lost is because people weren't holding on to their private keys. Maybe people, is a famous story of a guy who actually didn't hold on to his keys way back in the day when it wasn't worth anything, and he threw out a laptop that had thousands and thousands of Bitcoin on it. So that is a pretty expensive mistake, and that actually wasn't originally on the list. But where I was going with all this is not having a plan for your crypto when you pass away. So if you've got some super secretive plan of how you break up your private key and how you stash things away, but is there a way? Is it too complicated where if you pass away that no one can get to your crypto? And so if you have a spouse, you want to think of ways for them to be able to inherit your crypto. And there is different multi-signature basically solutions out there where, let's say, maybe if you get 3 people who are signing off on a transaction, it goes instantly, whereas if you get 2 people signing off, maybe it takes a little bit longer. If you have 1 person signing off, maybe it takes a tremendous amount of time. Maybe not tremendous, maybe it takes a month, whereas if you end up having 3 keys, it's instant. So there's different ways where if you were to pass away, you could maybe, let's say you have your brother and your spouse, and they each have one of the keys, and then they lock, and then after maybe a month or so, then your funds are dispersed. That's just one hypothetical. There's several different ways that you can do this. Not saying one way is the right way, one way is the wrong way. Another thing people always find themselves into is getting way too emotional over these coins. So people are, getting locked into one mindset, getting locked into another mindset, and really kind of using that to their detriment. So, don't get too emotional. Don't get too tied into a coin. Maybe it's the first coin you ever heard of besides Bitcoin, and, it's real near and dear to your heart. Well, if there's things that are changing, and which I will reference in the other list that we have here, which is going to be the top 10 things you need to know, most important things you need to know before investing into a cryptocurrency. So you want to check out that one in tandem, as there is, a tiny bit of overlap, but it will definitely be a good, 1-2 punch for people. Now, another one is all these get-rich quick schemes that are out there. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen, the likes of, hey, why don't you contribute 0.1 Bitcoin here, and we promise we'll give you a full Bitcoin back. Or, if you give us 0.1 Bitcoin, then we're going to trade it, and over the course of, 2 weeks, we're going to give you, because of profits and everything, we'll give you a full Bitcoin back. And then almost always these are scams. Almost always people end up losing their money, even if they aren't even scams. It's just the nature of how things go. And so if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. if the actual developers and the marketers are trying to hype something up, I know there's one crypto in particular who I'm thinking of that did a really good job on this, because when I talk to this particular founder, he never talks about price, never hypes up what it's going to end up doing in terms of hodl, moon, lambo, any of that stuff. And so when you get to these guys who are talking about trying to solve real world problems and what the tech is and how they're going to do it and who's on their team, these are all important factors. But don't just go for the guy that says you invest today, you guarantee that we're going to make you 10,000% return, or hey man, just throw in $1,000 and this could be $1 million 2 years from now. Don't fall for that type of hype. I mean, I see this constantly all the time, way more than I would like to admit of how much I see this, but just perusing around a little bit different Facebook groups, it's super common to see this type of stuff. And finally, what you want to look out for is when you sell your Bitcoin for another altcoin, you want to make sure that you keep the price of that asset relative to Bitcoin and not US dollars. So what people do is they'll say, okay, we'll sell our Bitcoin for, let's say, Dogecoin, just making up the first one that came to my head. And what we're doing with Dogecoin, what most people will then do is they'll then track what the percent gain was as it related to the US dollar. And certainly that's what the IRS wants you to, how they want you to track it. But hopefully we'll get you set up with a self-directed IRA or Roth IRA, and you're not going to have to worry about the taxes and the implications of having the trade. But it's just a common thing I see where they trade their Bitcoin, and then let's say Bitcoin then goes up 100% relative to Dogecoin, just hypothetically. Well, then now you want to make sure that what the opportunity cost of you abandoning ship for Bitcoin into Dogecoin is. And then these are just some of the things that come off the top of my head of things that people, new investors into this space need to watch out for, because it is rife with different scams. It's rife with a lot of newbie mistakes where just people who don't even get scammed end up falling into one of the many rat traps that exist, not the least of which is throwing out your laptop that has a bunch of Bitcoin on it, not putting your private key on just a regular piece of paper. I'd recommend putting it. I actually have a little metal engraver tool where it's sort of like a I want to say tattoo gun is what it sounds like, and you just go and you just put in your 18 or 24 words on a little dog tag, or maybe you split them up, into 2 or 3 or 4, who knows. But just make sure it's not too complicated. But I hope you guys found the 6 biggest mistakes, which I may have even thrown in one bonus there, so maybe 7 mistakes that crypto investors make. And hopefully you don't make these mistakes. Hopefully you end up talking with us and we get you set on the right path, so that way we can help you out with the most tax efficient way possible to get invested with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Thank you for watching.